Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, starring Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, Celeste Connor, Logan Kim, Patton Oswalt, Kumail Nanjiani, William Atherton, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, and Andy Potts, directed by Gil Keenan. Now, before I get into this movie, welcome back, Gil Keenan, from the remake of Poltergeist, and welcome back to Ghostbusters, because I reviewed the movies before, leading up to the Afterlife, all those 3 years ago. And is it going to be as good as this one? We'll see, as I did go to the movie twice. The first time I saw it was in a VIP, like, recliner chair area, and I just went in a regular old theater, that kind of thing. So, let's see if this is any better than Afterlife. Let's get into it. We start off in New York in the year 1904, 80 years before the first Ghostbusters movie, where the fire station was before it was ever the Ghostbusters building. And some firefighters take off to the location where they grab something ancient that is pure evil that freezes their hands as well as bodies, and they trap in some old golden ball. And the opening sets up the movie's plot that makes absolutely no sense. We get back to Gary Gruberman, returned by Paul Rudd, with the Spangler family. And Spangler as an Egon Spangler, that was Harold Ramis before he passed away, may he rest in peace. But his family, Callie, returned by Carrie Coon, Callie's daughter, Phoebe, returned by McKenna Grace, and son, Trevor, returned by Finn Wolfhard, go after a ghost that looks like a dragon, and they eventually bust it while doing some property damage. And what was funny was the cops doesn't do a damn thing about it, but they involved Mayor Walter Peck, returned by William Atherton from the first movie, as he bans Phoebe from being in the Ghostbusters business because she's 15 years old, which technically is a minor. And Phoebe is upset about it, and I don't like returning to these characters as they soured me after Ghostbusters Afterlife, where they were mediocre characters in that movie, but here they make questionable choices, which I'll bring up later in the show. And upset Phoebe has to act like a regular teenager for the next 3 years. And Kelly tells Gary to act like a jerk to Phoebe and Trevor, who are almost adults, but they're teenagers. While podcast returned by Logan Kim makes advertisements for Dr. Ray Stantz, returned by Dan Aykroyd, as he takes ghosts by merchandises, until two things happen. One, Phoebe visits podcast and sees some marshmallow men taking over some stuff in the basement, and two, Ray getting a visitor named Nadim Razmati, played by Kumail Nanjiani, who sells Ray some ancient stuff like the gold ball from the first scene, and it breaks the wall in the ghost trap area, and Ray gives him money for it, like $50 to be exact. I don't know how much it was. And this character is so badly written, while the drama with Phoebe didn't convince me to care, as I don't care. While Gary gets a visitor from Janine Milnitz, returned by Annie Potts, Trevor, who's not the main focus of this movie in particular, goes to the attic to find Slimer from the first movie and gets slimed in the Ghostbusters go bust some ghosts without Phoebe, while she goes to a park in New York and plays chess with the ghost named Melody. And I don't like the returning characters as well as the new characters, but I do like seeing the original cast much more than the new cast. And there was a lot of callbacks to the original. Like, I don't know if I'm a big fan of the way they did it or not, but yeah. Lars Pinfield tusts the ghost jail as he gets scared, while he brings Janine to Winston Zeddemore, and I don't get scared by this scene. Winston Zeddemore, returned by Ernie Hudson, and this movie has no suspense to the point it doesn't scare me, like the first movie scared me at times. Trevor and Lucky, returned by Celeste O'Connor, who interns with the Ghostbusters factory, where she'll learn to capture ghosts and trap them in a bigger ghost jail than in the firehouse they owned back in 1984, as they have a new building while Ray and Podcast joins them, and Phoebe sees some ghosts trapped by a machine that won't be able to get out, even a dangerous red laser spot ghost. And Gary tests Phoebe and kind of have a connection with her, and the acting in this is dreadful. Phoebe picks up the phone as it rings, and she gets Podcast to come with her to bust a ghost at a diner, who happens to be Melody, as Phoebe doesn't fire at her. And I get the impression she missed on purpose as she blows up the diner, and Phoebe invites Melody into the Ghostbusters building, and and show her the ghost jail, and Callie wonders who Phoebe was talking to, and Melody, we learn, is a traitor and works for the Gold Ball Ghost, and while Lucky and Lars test the Gold Ancient Ball, and the lights act funny in a strange way, while ghosts almost escape, but the red dot demon, I'm going to call it for the rest of the show, escapes, and it goes around the city, and the special effects look so bad. It needed some more work. And was there any humor? Because if there was, it wasn't clicking with me. Trevor tries to feed Slimer some Cheetos while he tries to capture Slimer, but something makes an earthquake in the basement as it blows a hole in the wall. And based on what's going on with Melody at this point, it was predictable. Trevor, Podcast, Ray goes to Lucky and Lars as the Marshmallow Men hear the call from the Gold Ball, as Trevor, Lucky, and Lars go to Nadim's apartment and find some ancient stuff in a hidden room in the kitchen, and discover Nadim is some kind of ghost or something, I don't know. And these scenes are so bad it was badly written, in my opinion. Phoebe and Podcast hang out with Ray and discover they need to investigate and take a motorcycle to the library, where they meet Dr. Hubert Wardsky, played by Patton Oswalt, as they go to the old library, where they discover the Gold Ball has a ghost called Garaka, and we learn about Garaka's origin as the red dot demon is there and terrorizes the library as it goes in an audio recording of a group of people in the middle of July to a statue of a lion, and attacks as Ray, Phoebe, and Podcast try to stop it. When the cops come in, they're successful, but they make it a mess out of it, while Nadim is tested by Dr. Peter Venkman, returned by Bill Murray. While Venkman throws a couple of pens at Nadim, and Nadim has some kind of power that he can control fire. But I did like the callbacks to the original Ghostbusters, which worked fine, but the new fire guy was terribly written. Mayor Peck says the Ghostbusters are officially finished, and Phoebe gets arrested while Ray is talked to by Winston, and about how he could have gotten Phoebe and Podcast killed, as Ray confesses he loves being a Ghostbuster. And the cops take over the Ghostbusters building as Lars comes in with Nadim, and as they spent their last night at the Ghostbusters building, with Gary quoting the line from the Ray Parker Jr. song. And Nadim learns from Ray he's the fire master and practices lighting a candle, as he's led to believe it's impossible, but he does it anyways and gets more and more successful. Meanwhile, Gary tries to talk with Phoebe, but Phoebe is outside and finds Melody, and she does talk with her while while going to the Ghostbusters factory, and kills herself for a couple of minutes, becomes a ghost, and while she's still a human, she becomes a ghost, and she lets out other ghosts, including Garaka, as Phoebe feels betrayed, and I believe trusting Melody was questionable, because how could people befriend ghosts, which was a questionable thing for the script to begin with. After unleashing the ghosts, Phoebe feels guilty and wants everyone in her life to hate her, while Lucky saves her life and almost gets frozen by Garaka, and Callie and Gary get Phoebe, and Garaka freezes a man working at a store while they sell fire and cigarettes, and freezes every single one of them up. And we move on to the teaser trailer scene where people are at the beach and in a carnival versus on a Ferris wheel, and it becomes all frozen, including all of New York, while this is going on. And I'm thinking, is this the best you can do? If yes, I don't want to see any more after this, as this should have stopped after the first movie, in my opinion. Gary, Callie, Phoebe go to the Ghostbusters building, with Ray, Janine, Winston, Podcast, Trevor, and Nadim are there, and Lucky and Lars come to the building to help them out by suiting up. And who's at first comes to the door? Venkman. Surprised to see Janine in a Ghostbusters uniform, which was also in the trailer. And a tricycle comes with the ghost as we start the climax at this point, and I don't care. They should have really stopped this after the first movie. The Ghostbusters car goes backwards towards the Ghostbusters, and Lars is puked on, while Trevor and Lucky get attacked until Gary saves their lives, as does Nadim. And Podcast was stupid enough to break a machine to make the pizza fly, until Slimer eats it up, while Phoebe runs into Melody, but not afraid to stop her, and tells her Garaka won't save her family, help her and see her family again, as Garaka comes to the Ghostbusters building, and they stick together, but Phoebe isn't there quite yet. They fight Garaka, and Nadim enters the fighting area and tries to reason with him as he goes to Queens, and Garaka goes back to Narnia, and I'm thinking, really with that? Anyways, but Garaka discovers Nadim is the fire master, and Garaka lets every ghost out of the ghost jail and traps everyone except for Phoebe, as she hits the ghost in the chest while Garaka is powerful and almost turns Phoebe cold until Melody gives Nadim her last match, and she's been holding for this whole movie, and Nadim fires the light to Garaka, and everybody helps Phoebe as Podcast tries to capture the ghost, and Ray gets an idea to send all the ghosts back to the ghost trap, and it defeats Garaka. And I feel like the original Ghostbusters were more help than the new Ghostbusters, with the exception of Nadim, as Melody says her goodbyes to Phoebe, and they come out as heroes, and Mayor Peck suddenly discovers they're here to help reluctantly, and Phoebe calls Gary Dad as credits roll to a mid-credits scene where the Marshmallow Men steal a truck full of marshmallows, and no end credits scene, and no Sigourney Weaver either, which disappointed me the most, and the climax was way too convenient, and the mid-credits scene was bad enough as it was, as this movie is unfortunately going to make money, and I can't believe it myself, but it's better than that god-awful 2016 film with Melissa McCarthy. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 3.1 out of 10. This movie makes questionable choices with the characters like Phoebe trusting Melody, which is a perfect example of why I don't like returning to those characters, nor do I like the new characters, but I did like returning to the original Ghostbusters characters. But wait, no Sigourney Weaver, as that disappointed me, and the effects looked so bad and they needed some more work on them. The plot was bad to the point as the humor wasn't clicking for me, nor was I scared like I was in the first Ghostbusters movie. And the acting in this is dreadful, and I'm led to believe they should have stopped after the first movie. The movie is so bad it's unforgivable, but I did like the callbacks to the first movie, but unfortunately isn't enough for me to recommend this movie, as this is a non-recommendation, and I honestly wish they didn't continue the series. Nor do I wish this movie wasn't making money, but it's making money, and I can't believe it myself, but it's still better than that god-awful 2016 movie, in my opinion. So I'd like to thank you guys for returning with me to the Ghostbusters, and until if they ever do it again, which, God forbid, if there's something strange in the neighborhood, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters.